Okay, so this is the second part to the video, 1-202. I'm going to jump down to E because this is where I stopped at. All right. And I read F in the first one because you got to kind of jump around with this. Okay. All right. So E, subject to subsection F, which is right the next one down right here. Right. A person receives a notice or notification when. All right. So let's highlight this because they're going to break it down. Right. So it comes to that person's attention. Right, so the person is the organization, right? So when you put the organization on the mail, on the letterhead, on the email, they said, hey, contact us here. This is where you send such and such correspondence. That's the person, their entity, their straw man, if you will, is receiving, because they have an EIN number, the notification, right? Because it came to their attention, right? All right, or 2. A person receives a notice or notification when it is duly delivered by you in a form reasonable under the circumstances by mail. If they said, hey, don't mail it to us, then that wouldn't be reasonable under the circumstances. They said only receive it by email, or you see what I'm saying? That's reasonable. Right? What did y'all talk about? Right? So duly delivered in a form reasonable under the circumstances at the place of business through which the contract was made, right? So the contract was made, so you got to deliver to that address, or at another location held out by that person. What person? The person that you're sending it to. If they said, hey, send it here instead of here, or send it there instead of there, but in this case, send it here, but only by email on this day, Monday through Friday. Right? So read your contract because it's going to tell you what's reasonable. Right? So this is going to be a word that you're going to see all the time. Right? And my take on this is that this is Congress's way of leaving it open for the situation to change and for certain things to apply. Because certain things aren't reasonable all the time, even though it was said to be done a particular way. You see what I'm saying? So that reasonable word you're going to see a lot. But to me, it's a contextual word Congress is putting in there to allow people to interpret and say, that's not reasonable, right? In this situation, right? Okay. All right, so another location held out, I'm right here, held out by that person at the place for receipt of such communication. All right, so we're going to read F again because it's in order, right? So notice, knowledge, or a notice or notification received by an organization is effective for a particular transaction from the time it is brought to the attention of the individual conducting that transaction. And in any event from the time it would have been brought to the individual's attention if the organization has exercised due diligence. An organization exercises due diligence if it maintains reasonable routines for communicating significant information to the person conducting the transaction, and there is reasonable compliance with the routines. Due diligence does not require an individual acting for the organization, right? So the people you talk to on the phone, the agents, right? So due diligence does not require that person acting for the organization to communicate information, right? So they can't communicate information unless the communication they're communicating is part of their regular duties, or the individual has reason to know of the transaction and that the transaction will be materially affected by the information. Okay, so what they're saying is, hey, if they mistrain them, but something's really true with your situation, it's okay because they're an organization and they were doing their job. That's what I get from that. They was doing their job. They was acting within their duties. You know how you get a job? If you ever had a job, they tell you, hey, do this. This is all you do. You don't do nothing else outside of this. Right? Unless we train specifically on something and you have the reason to know, or you can communicate. Well, no. If you have reason to know of something, right? So who we're sending these instruments to, they don't have reason to know. Because that's why they can just send us anything and then get away with it, because they don't have reason to know of the transaction. And that the transaction will be materially affected by the information, because they think we're the name. They don't have reason to know. Right? That's what I get from that. That's what Congress is saying to me. Right? That's what I hear.